In the Valley of the Shadow, God's Promise of Presence. Part 1. Beloved Griever. Psalm 38 tells us that God is concerned about everything that concerns us. So great is his concern for us who are grieving, that he has made promises just for you as you walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Psalm 23 verse 4 is just one of many such promises for those who occupy the seat of bereavement. This psalm contains one of the most soul-stirring verses in the Bible, which includes the piercing phrase, "Thou art with me." These words often resonate deeply with those walking the dark road of loss, and can offer a profound sense of comfort and assurance for us. The truth of the matter is that even in the darkest valleys of grief, God's presence remains consistent. The shadow of death symbolizes not only mortality but also the deep sorrow and pain we experience over the loss of a loved one. In your grief, imagine God walking beside you, holding you close, and whispering, "You are not alone." Let his presence be a source of strength when the weight of sorrow feels unbearable. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Psalm 23 verse 4. Here, the psalmist, traditionally identified as David, paints a picture of a journey through a dark and foreboding valley. The valley of the shadow of death serves as a symbol for the most painful and sorrowful moments in life. For those who are grieving, this image is particularly relatable. Loss often feels like a descent into an enveloping darkness where hope and light seem distant. Yet, God has a promise, just for you. That promise is found in the verse's vitally important assurance, which simply but profoundly declares, "Thou art with me." This is not a promise that we will be exempt from hardship, but a guarantee of divine companionship while going through it. It reflects the concept of God's closeness and presence in the lives of his people. For Christians, this assurance is further anchored in the incarnation of Christ, who is described as Emmanuel, meaning God with us, Matthew 1 verse 23. Friends, the thing that makes this assurance even more powerful is that it is not merely a nice-sounding phrase. It is a promise from God. Throughout Scripture, God repeatedly declares his commitment to be with his people. From his words to Joshua, "I will never leave you nor forsake you," Joshua 1 verse 5, all the way to Jesus' parting promise, "And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age," Matthew 28 verse 20. In fact, the Bible is full of declarations of his steadfast presence. For those in grief, this promise serves as an anchor that can hold us down and keep us from free falling into a pit of anguish and despair. It means that God's presence is not conditional or short-lived, but a consistent reality, rooted in his unchanging nature and faithfulness. Now take a moment and go back to the cover picture for this video. See the image of the gentleman walking the dark road along with Jesus? As you look at it, instead of feeling abandoned or isolated, let the scripture wash over you and remind you that Jesus is with you on your dark road of grief, just as he is with the man in the picture. Let it remind you that you are accompanied by the compassionate, loving, caring presence of God. This does not necessarily remove the pain of loss, but offers a mechanism to help us endure it. Feelings of loneliness, despair, and even anger are often common in situations of profound loss. During those times, allow the phrase "Thou art with me" anchor you to God's promise to never leave or forsake you. It validates all the various, complex emotions we're experiencing while providing a lifeline of hope at the same time. Knowing that God is present does not erase our pain but offers a way for us to process the pain without fear of judgment or abandonment. During periods of grief, relationships, routines, our sense of normalcy, and sometimes even our sense of safety and security have been completely disrupted. If this is true for you, know that during the chaos, the promise of God's presence can be a stabilizing force. The psalmist's assurance underscores that even in the shadow of death, there is no need to fear, not because the valley is easy, but because we are not alone. Let's dig into this promise a little deeper. This psalm starts with the words, "The Lord is my shepherd." The image of a shepherd guiding his sheep is significant. A shepherd's role is not merely to lead the sheep, but to protect and nurture them. For those in grief, that translates to the comforting thought that we are cared for tenderly and intentionally. It acknowledges our wounded hearts while assuring us that we are not forgotten or forsaken. At this point, you may ask, how does the promise of "Thou art with me" help me in real life? First, it can influence the way we handle our loss. Recognizing God's presence can encourage us to be completely open and honest in prayer as we agonize over the loss of a loved one. Whether through tears, silence, or words, the act of bringing our pain before God can be profoundly healing. Additionally, God's presence is often felt through the kindness and support of others. Friends, family, faith communities can all become visible reminders of God's companionship. Simple things like providing a listening ear, a meal, or a heartfelt prayer can convey the message, "You are not alone." For some, practicing the ministry of presence is necessary. The ministry of presence is defined as simply the act of being there for someone. Since no words are required, it can allow the aggrieved person to just feel all that they need to feel without judgment or remorse. Because let's face it, sometimes there are just no words. Beloveds, in such situations, allow yourself to understand that the person sitting with you is God sent and a true visible example of God's love. Additionally, things like lighting a candle or reading scripture can help you connect with God. Just remember, God is always here and the promise of His presence is always here. For some, grief may bring doubt rather than comfort. The reality of loss can make God's presence feel distant or even absent. In times like these, the promise "Thou art with me" may feel more like a hope than a certainty, and the Bible does not shy away from these feelings. Just take a look at the many Psalms of lament. They are full of cries questioning God's presence and faithfulness. Yet, they often return to a place of trust. This back and forth mirrors the experience of many of us who are grieving. Sometimes we also go back and forth between faith and doubt, hope and despair. In this wrestling, "Thou art with me" can serve as a declaration of faith, even when our feelings do not match the words of faith we speak. It serves as a reminder that God's presence is not based upon whether we believe He's there or not. God is, and God was, even before time as we know it began. And He is present now, even in the silence, the questions, and the tears. He is here because He promised He would be here. Remember, grief is a journey, not a destination. The assurance of "Thou art with me" offers hope for this journey, teaching us that healing and renewal are possible. While the valley of the shadow of death is dark, it is not endless. The psalmist's journey continues beyond the valley to green pastures and still waters. Psalm 23 verse 2. For those who are grieving, this is a promise that life can hold beauty and meaning again, even after profound loss. This hope is rooted in the promise of God's presence. It means that even as the grieving process unfolds, we are not left to navigate it alone. God's promise of companionship ensures that those of us who mourn are supported every step of the way. Healing does not mean you have to forget or minimize the extent of your loss. Instead, it means we commit to learn step by step and tear by tear how to include this loss into our life experience. We do it in a way that allows us to continue to function from one present moment to the next, until the day that we smile and even laugh again. The presence of God, as expressed in "Thou art with me," can be a vital part of this process, providing strength and guidance as we find our way through this dark valley. The phrase "Thou art with me" from Psalm 23 verse 4 is a timeless reminder of God's steadfast presence, and can be particularly powerful for us who are experiencing grief. It speaks to the heart of our human condition, offering a blessed assurance, comfort, and hope. It does not erase the pain of loss any more than the headlights on a car eliminates the darkness. Rather, headlights help guide us through the darkness. Likewise, allow this promise to help guide you through your own valley of the shadows in the company of God, the most trusted friend. In grief, the promise of "Thou art with me" can be a source of profound consolation. It invites us, the grieving community, to lean into God's presence, to find comfort in community, and to embrace the possibility of healing. Finally, it is a declaration of faith that God's light persists, even in the darkest shadows, and that His presence can guide us through every valley we face. Thank you for watching, and join us for upcoming videos where we will share more of God's promise with you.